Radio K-Air, 21st century streaming radio. Thanks for listening to Radio K-Air.
Are you on Medicare or a caregiver of someone on Medicare? Listen to Senior Choices and learn how to prepare your loved one or yourself for living your best life on Radio K-Air.
Coming up next.
Radio K-Air, now available on Google Home, Amazon Alexa.
You seem very nice.
Tune in radio and follow us at www.radiokair.com.
Living your best life with Senior Choices for you. Welcome. I'm your host, Brent Vesay, co-owner of Assisted Living Locators Greater Northeast Houston. As always, we got to start with, how do you get in touch with me? It's pretty simple. You can call or text 281-691-6450. You can email me at Brent, the letter V, Brent V at assistedlivinglocators.com. Visit our website, www.assistedlivinglocators.com/Northeast Houston, or Facebook at ALL Northeast Houston, or on the gram, Instagram at senior_choices. Last week, seems so long ago, doesn't it? But it was only last week. We learned about ageism, what it is, how it works and impacts our society, the three kinds out there impacting older individuals, and what the true source of it is. Us. We learned about how we can address it and how to address it. So this week, we're going to talk about something that we have been mentioning on the show quite a bit, but now we're going to really dive into it, okay? And we're going to talk about, most importantly, how to access this resource. And of course, I've spoken about it before, but now it's time to dive into the world of the Veterans Administration and the programs and benefits it has to offer. As always, when we dive into a resource, we have a subject matter expert in with us to discuss it. And today, our subject matter expert on the Veterans Administration is David Whitfield. He is the Client Relationship Director of Veteran Care Advisors. And Veteran Care Advisors is committed to providing expert assistance and support to veterans or adult children caring for their aging parents. Veteran Care Advisors work under the supervision of accredited VA legal professionals and advocate for senior veterans in need. David and his team are true experts on the VA system and their programs, and we're very happy to have him here today to talk to us about these programs in greater detail. Welcome, David, to Senior Choices.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
So let's just dive right into it, and let's start our conversation, David, with an overview of the VA system.
So the VA, like many government systems, is just a massive behemoth of different possibilities. Their programs range from immediate need programs. For those, it's a great resources, the crisis hotline. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. There are some great educational benefits, especially if you're from Texas. And, of course, there are some aid and attendance benefits, which is what we specialize in, helping senior wartime heroes pay for the assisted living.
So you talked about, a lot of people are most familiar with the health benefit aspect. That's a benefit my family was able to intersect with my grandfather. He was in the VA health care system a great deal. So what's a little bit more, does all veterans can get access to the health system?
Yeah, the health care benefit is one of the most widely available benefits to all veterans. If you've served 1 year, 2 year, 4 years, or 20 years, you have access to this benefit. And something that is really exciting that a lot of people don't realize is you are no longer limited to going to the VA hospital, the VA health centers. If you have a urgent need, and not just an emergency, but even an urgent need care, there are several community partners that are now available for a simple copay, and sometimes not even that. And they can, your listeners can go to the VA website, pull up the medical information page, and that will allow them to find out which community centers, community partners are out there. And I'm talking about these are your standard XL, urgent care, things of that nature. So these are brand named places where you can go and avoid having to go downtown or into Town Ball or into the various places to the VA medical centers.
So you mentioned that crisis benefit. Is that the mental health component that is out there that's available for the veterans to be able to access, when they need it?
Well, the crisis line is very important. It is for immediate needs. The first one, mental health, suicide, homelessness, any of these kinds of things where a veteran may be considered hurting, anytime a veteran would be considering hurting themselves or they would be in danger at that time, the crisis line is available. And I'd like to go ahead and give that number if that's okay.
Oh, please do.
So that's 1-800-273-8255 and then press the number 1. Again, that's 1-800-273-8255. And you can Google VA crisis line and get that number as well. So again, this is if you're homeless, if you're considering hurting yourself, if you need to speak to someone for any kind of immediate need, they will be able to help you with those.
Any kind of need?
Any kind of immediate need. It's more for the mental health and homelessness and things, not long-term issues, but short-term issues.
So is that accessible at specific times, or is it available all the time? Or
the crisis hotline is available 24/7, and of course, the only thing I did not mention is PTSD. Obviously, it would be if you're having an episode of some kind, that would be a person you could call.
So that ability to access any resource for like urgent care and those types of things, that's a fairly new thing that's been only for the last few years, hasn't it?
It does. It goes back 4 or 5 years when the VA kind of recognized that it couldn't handle everybody all the time. And going to the VA hospital or medical center is generally not a quick endeavor.
No, I can speak from experience. It is not a very quick endeavor at all.
So if you have a need, then you're able to go to an urgent care center. In fact, we were helping my sister move, and a veteran friend of ours cut his hand pretty significantly, and we were able just to go to an urgent care very nearby, and they stitched him up, and he just showed them his VA medical card, and that was it.
It's that simple.
That simple. There is some do offer require a $50 copay, but no matter how you slice it, that's a great way to get something done quickly.
I mean, it is. That's very. So, is there like a list of these resources out there that people can access?
Yes, if they're here in Houston, just go to the DeBakey webpage, DeBakey Veterans Medical Center webpage, and just look up community partners, and they'll be able to find out which ones are available.
So on the community partners page for the DeBakey Center here in Houston area, that's where you can find a list of some of these outside the VA system resources that are available. So we've now started with our conversation with David on looking at some of the benefits that are immediately out there and available. And in our next segment, we're going to talk some more about these other benefits that are out there available, building up to his expertise in aid and attendance on Radio KAIR. Stay tuned for these messages of our sponsors.
Radio K-Air, 21st Century Streaming Radio. Thanks for listening to Radio K-Air.
Welcome back. Assisted Living Locators Greater Northeast Houston partners with Dementia Care Education to provide free monthly educational seminars about dementia care in our country. This month's seminar, Medication and Mind Fog. I must have it today because my mind is in a fog. But in any case, it is going to be today, Wednesday, at noon Central Standard Time. You can still register for this free event and listen to it by going to the website dementiacareeducation.com/Northeast Houston -2. These seminars are excellent, and I've learned a lot from listening in on them, so I encourage you all to do so as well, especially if you have someone with dementia in your life. So we're here today with David Whitfield of Veteran Care Advisors. And in our first segment, he gave us an excellent overview of some of the benefits that are available, starting with the health benefits and the medical benefits. We talked about how these are open to all of veterans, but that's not just that simple, is it, David? There's some things that we have to do in order to access these benefits.
Absolutely. As with any government situation, there's going to be hoops to jump through. So the good news is the medical facilities, the VA medical facilities do have emergency rooms. So clearly any veteran that has an emergency situation can go to an emergency room at the VA or to any emergency room. But if you want to take advantage of all of the benefits, then I strongly suggest you register. And to register for the VA medical system, essentially you need your DD-214 and some basic ID, a driver's license, something of that nature. And once you have that magic VA card, that opens up the entire VA medical system to you.
So that form that you mentioned, the DD-214. Yes. So that is what? What is that exactly?
The DD-214, I often call it the holy grail of medical or military forms. The DD-214 is your separation paperwork. Now, you essentially can do nothing without that evidence. That is the key piece of evidence or proof that you were in the military. Now, the good news is you can get that for free from the archives. The downside is sometimes they will take months to get that to you. They're still trying to recover from 10% labor staffing during COVID for 2 years. So they're trying their best to overcome that drawback or that backlog, if you will. But, they're working as hard as they can. There are also a couple of websites that I've heard good things about that charge between $69 and $99 to get that in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. One is DD-214 Direct, and the other is Aardvark Research. I don't advocate for these two, but I've heard good things about both of those. Or you can simply Google, get my DD-214, and several will come up.
So the discharge paperwork is the key, okay? So it's the golden key for the system. And regardless, if you don't have your paperwork, vets, that's something that you want to go ahead and do. Regardless of whether you're going to access the system, you should have that paperwork.
Absolutely, because everything from your medical abilities, your access to the aid and attendance, and hopefully far down the road, your access to burial benefits are all going to be contingent on that DD-214. And it's easier for the veteran to get it than for someone else to get it.
So, David, in general, if they have that paperwork, regardless of whether they're active duty or they were reserve, they would be able to access the system as long as they were honorably discharged. Is that correct?
Generally speaking, anyone who has a DD-214 that is has a discharge other than dishonorable,
there you go,
will have access to certain benefits. The health benefits being the most open. Again, the VA is a labyrinth of benefits, and I would not dare say what a reservist versus a active duty would be eligible for. But I do know that as a rule, the educational benefits, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and the health benefits are open to everyone who served honorably.
And the crisis line is open to
everyone, every veteran of any stripe,
regardless of what their discharge papers say.
Absolutely, the crisis hotline is there for a crisis situation, so they're not going to stop and ask if you have your DD-214 handy.
Right. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that the crisis system is there, especially the hotline for all veterans, period. Okay. And these other benefits are available to other veterans that meets David's specifications moving forward. Now, they are able to access the system, they get their card, and then with that card would enable them to go to any provider that was on that list that you mentioned on the DeBakey website, correct?
That's correct. And those community partners are more for urgent care situations. The VA obviously wants you to come to them if you have time to plan, if you're going to do surgery, if you're going to do things where you have the forethought and ability to plan ahead of time. But they just know realistically you can't always make it downtown or to Tomball or wherever the nearest VA medical center is.
So if we have that information in our head that we can go to that website, get the urgent care addressed, for the most part, everything else is going to be requiring us as a veteran to go into an outpatient or other clinic to be able to access the benefits, more or less, correct?
That is correct. And one of the things the VA does, especially I think it's the DeBakey Center downtown, they have vision and hearing, X-ray, as well as several specialties and the general practitioners, and of course the surgery options. So those are $0 cost for the most part.
And I can testify for my grandfather, who was a veteran and was in the VA system, but he also had a regular PCP. So he went to the VA for things that would be more costly to access in the real world. So like glasses. He got his glasses, he got his hearing aid, he got, back then, his Humalog and his diabetes insulin from the VA often, because that was a lot less expensive than going ahead and ordering it from his Part D prescription drug. So a lot of veterans do that, right, David?
Yeah, a combination gives you the ability to go to a practitioner, a general practitioner for something minor, and just pay a copay, where the VA serves as the emergency catastrophic surgery kind of benefit.
So there's a lot of different clinics in the area, correct, that people can access?
Right. You can literally just go to the VA website and put in a zip code, and that will give you the closest VA medical centers. And then when you get to the community page, you put in that same zip code and get those community options.
So we've done a great job so far with David's help of exploring the world of the healthcare system. And in our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about those educational benefits that are out there on Radio KAIR. Stay tuned after these messages from our sponsors.
You are listening to Radio KAIR. Radio KAIR. Broadcasting from historic downtown Humble, Texas.
Welcome back to Senior Choices. I'm Brent Vesay, host. We can't forget about our great show music provided by the Silverman Sound Studio and Shane Ivers at silvermansoundstudio.com. This website has royalty-free music available for download and use. All they ask is that you mention them after you use their music and how they are supported by donations made on the website. It's a great resource with some great music options available, so please check it out and support it. All right, so we're here with David Whitfield of Veteran Care Advisors talking about the VA system. And we've had a very good discussion, detailed discussion about the health system and the benefits available and the new flexibility that's there, being able to access these urgent care outside resources that I think is a very positive development for the VA system, as well as how you can access it with your discharge papers. Vets, make sure you have those. Okay, and David gave us some good resources to be able to get those if you want them quicker than going through the normal process, which is quite lengthy right now. Okay, so you got to be ready for that part of it. But now what we want to do is dive into a different segment of the VA that's out there, and that's their educational programs. They have some excellent educational resources available for vets. So now we're going to open it up and discuss that. So David, why don't you give us a little overview of what that looks like?
So the VA does provide educational benefits while you're in the military, as well as when you get out of the military. The most common and the most easily accessible is the GI Bill. Mm-hmm. The GI Bill is generally used immediately following your time in the military. Of course, I used the GI Bill when I first got out and attended Tomball because that was the only Lone Star college that was anywhere near us back then. So that was 100 years ago, of course. So, but the GI Bill is available not only for colleges, any accredited college, but also any accredited trade school. So you're not limited to going to college with the GI Bill.
Really?
people have begun to recognize that college is great if that's what you're interested in, if that's where your abilities lie. But I very much like to have mechanics and electricians and plumbers because I can do some of those things, but not all of those things.
I can't do any of those things. So I really like having those guys around and girls for sure. So absolutely. Is there some sort of accreditation that the VA needs to have in order for those types of institutions to be covered?
The VA just says accredited, so I think they leave that up to the general education authorities in any given state. I mean, obviously the colleges are accredited or they're not, but the trade schools are going to have their accrediting bodies as well.
So my brother-in-law also used the GI Bill, and he did it in order to finish off not only his undergraduate, I think he was able to use it for going to med school. Does that sound right, David?
The the GI Bill has a financial limit.
Okay.
And so if you burn through that limit in your undergraduate degree, then you're finished. If you paid for some of that before you use the GI Bill, then it will go ahead and support any level of education that you're pursuing until you run out of money. Okay,
so it's a fixed amount. It's a bucket that's once it's used up, that's it.
That's correct.
Okay. So is that something that could be transferable?
The GI Bill is not transferable, but if you're in Texas, there's something called the Hazelwood Act. If you were a Texas resident when you entered the military, the Hazelwood Act allows you to pass your benefit on to children or grandchildren. In fact, I'm using the Hazelwood Act to pay for my daughter's tuition and books at Texas Women's University up in Denton, Texas, right now.
Denton, very like it. My son's at University of North Texas, which is basically across the highway from the women's college. So the Hazelwood Act in Texas enables that transferability aspect to be there.
That's correct. You can give it to your children and to your grandchildren. I think that's as far as they go. 2 generations is sufficient for them. The important thing to note is that there are some states that reciprocate that have similar programs. So if you track those down, then that does open up other possibilities if you wanted to go out of state.
So since we're talking about transferability, on the medical side of things, are any of those benefits inheritable or transferable, to spouses or anything like that?
No, the medical benefits for the VA are pretty much limited to the veterans. There are some programs, financial programs that we can talk about a little later that may go to the surviving spouse, but that is about the end of that possibility.
Okay. So other than the GI Bill, is there anything else out there that would help the vets from an educational side of things?
They'd have to look in their states to see if many states have additional resources for them, but that would be a state-by-state basis, so I wouldn't claim to be an expert on those.
No, absolutely not. But it is important to know that the states will actually do things on their own, like Texas has done through the Hazelwood Act, in order to help the veterans do some more with extra benefits that they've earned through their service to the country. So outside of the educational benefits, are there anything else that's out there you think that our listeners would want to know before we get to your big bread and butter?
I think the key thing is to look. Look for what's available. Google is a wonderful thing. As I said, the VA has so many benefits that I wouldn't even begin to claim to be an expert on all of them. So Google and see what's out there. There are VA reps in most cities, so you can track them down. Again, just on the website, track them down, Google them through the VA website, and ask them. They are experts in this. This is what they do. It's their job is to help veterans find the various benefits that they have. So that's a resource that I would look up.
So here in Texas, are there anything else that's available that the state makes available in addition to the Hazelwood Act?
From the educational standpoint, I'm not really sure that that's something I'd be familiar with. But
outside of education,
there are so many programs that are not state run. I would like to send any veteran, especially if they're out fairly new, to texvet.org.
Texvet.org.
TEXVET.org. It is a clearinghouse of predominantly non-government groups that help. Texas A&M is on there a lot. They're just combined forces is there. You just go to that website, put in your zip code, and it will bring up the things that are immediately available in your area. And it is like I said, it is a great clearinghouse.
So that's a great resource for us vets that are out there to be able to access. We've now had a great discussion on these educational benefits. Now it's time to look at that long-term care. When we come back after these messages on Radio KAR, that's what we're going to do. Stay tuned.
Radio K-Air, 21st century streaming radio. Thanks for listening to Radio K-Air.
Welcome back to Senior Choices. I'm Brent Vesay, host, and we've had a great discussion so far with David Whitfield of Veteran Care Advisors, talking about the VA system overall and all the programs it has available. So many that he, the expert, doesn't even know everything about it. But there is a great resource out there, texvet.org, that you can access. Type in your zip code, and it'll even give you more resources that are available that are in your areas. So you can do that. And if you're outside of Texas, for those listeners, go to your own state's version of texvet.org, and you should be able to get those resources by zip code listed for sure. Now we're going to talk about what's in David's wheelhouse, and that is a benefit that is called aid in attendance. And it's one that I have seen before as well in what we do at assisted living locators. And I think it's time that we learn a little bit more about that benefit in detail. So David, take it away. What is aid in attendance?
So aid in attendance is specifically a wartime veteran benefit to assist in paying for long-term care. That could be home care, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, all of those long-term care areas.
So wartime, what does that mean?
So wartime means that they had to have served during some specific wartime time frames that the VA has put out. Now, they don't have to have been in combat. They don't even have to have been in theater. They just had to have served during wartime.
Active
duty. The only time that reservist or National Guard will qualify is if they were called to active duty.
Okay. Key stipulation, active duty during a period of war, not in theater per se.
Yeah, being in theater is not required, because if you were in the military during that time frame, you could have been called, you were willing to serve, or you were drafted, in which case it counts. So that's the short version of what it is. But what I always like to talk about is what it can do for our veterans. The company that I work for, Veteran Care Advisors, started a little over 10 years ago, and they were an offshoot of another company that was 30 years old. But almost 10 years ago, we helped a surviving spouse of a veteran, and to date, she's received over $100,000 in benefits.
$100,000 in benefits for a surviving spouse.
That's correct. So, of course, that's over 10 years. Her first monthly benefit was only about $800, but it's since gone up to $1,318 per month, and she's received that every month for 10 years. This benefit is for life.
So tell us a little bit more about what that looks like. What does the program actually look like for someone that's accessing this benefit?
All right. So your veteran or your surviving spouse that served during wartime has access to this aid and attendance benefit. And there are some financial requirements and some health requirements to determine if you're eligible.
So what are those financial and health requirements?
So the only hard line for finances is there is a asset limit of $138,000 cash assets, not including your home, not including your car, not including your personal property. As far as cash assets on hand is $138,000. The other financials are ratios, income versus expense, things of that nature. So there aren't any hard numbers in those. So That's the eligibility is tricky, which is why we do all of our eligibility calls for free.
Okay. So I guess the higher you have in assets, the lower the monthly benefit will probably be. It's kind of like an inverse relationship.
Well, the aid and attendance is a need-based program. So the biggest determining factor of what your benefit will be, which will be determined by the VA, of course, will be your income to expense ratio.
Okay.
So in many cases, a lot of our veterans have only Social Security or maybe a small pension to work with. And that's great until you start paying $5,000, $7,000 for memory care.
Right.
Or $3,500 for assisted living, those prices are just off the top of my head. Some can go much higher. So it is easy to see how, even with a good pension and Social Security, that care cost can dwarf that pretty quickly. And so, if your care cost is close to or above your income, then you will likely get the full benefit.
So it takes all expenses into account.
It takes all care expenses into account. So that would include home care,
Okay.
the assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing. That's always the biggest piece of this financial puzzle. But also the Part A, B, C for Medicaid. No, Medicare. And any monthly medications and any health insurance. So those are the general things that are included in the care costs. Again, so that's the cost of the care itself, assisted living, skilled nursing, memory care, home care, plus any health-related insurance that they pay.
So food, gas, those types of things are not included, but all those other expenses are included in that income to expense dynamic.
Correct. So you're going to, the VA looks at that as, you have to pay for your own basic necessities, but when it comes to care, that's when they're going to help.
So this is why we have subject matter experts on, because I did not know that. It was that specific of a delineation, because I just thought it was total expenses, but it's care expenses that are the real focus of that dynamic for the benefit. So that's very interesting. Does anything else get factored into it? Like if they're on Medicaid, getting help from the state, does that get factored into it?
The expense has to be paid out of pocket.
Okay.
So if you are destitute and Medicare, Medicaid are paying for your care, then you have no out-of-pocket costs. Therefore, you would not qualify for this benefit. This benefit is often to help prevent you from moving to that level.
Exactly. So this is the step that you take, if you can, before you get that assistance from the state through the Medicaid program. In general, David, are there limits on what vendors you can access for the benefit?
That's the beauty of this benefit. Once you receive it, it goes from the VA into your checking account, and you can pay any legitimate care cost that you want. So you can use whoever you want.
So anybody you want. Okay, that's a very key distinction of this benefit. I think we've talked about that in a previous show, but I want to reiterate that because when you get on Medicaid, you're going to be limited to what options you have available. So we've started our discussion with the aid and attendant program. We're going to continue that discussion after, in our next segment, we hear from these great sponsors on Radio KAIR. Stay tuned after these messages. Welcome back to Senior Choices. I'm Brent Vesay, and we're here having a fantastic discussion, learning a lot from David Whitfield of Veteran Care Advisors. We've had a great discussion over the entire program, the health, educational, the crisis hotline available to all vets that I hope everybody is able to access when they need it. And now we've had, in our last segment, a very good discussion about the aid and attendance benefit. It is a need-based program that helps veterans that served actively during a period of war in the United States history to be able to pay for costs that are above and beyond their capabilities for care at the time. And David did a very good discussion about what that looks like. We're going to start this segment with diving a little bit deeper into that, because we talked overall about the time frames, the time of war, and generally speaking, that's the case. But there's one exception to that, and it involves Vietnam, and it's kind of a little bit complicated. So I'm teeing it up now for David to give us a little bit breakdown of explaining how the Vietnam War period works for this aid and attendance benefit. David, can you give us kind of an overview of that?
Absolutely. And I will give you just these quick dates, but don't try to write them down or memorize them. I'll be happy to go over them with you. Again, our eligibility calls are always free, and we'll spend as much time as we need to see if you qualify and help you with that. But just for the quick rundown, World War II started December 7th, 1941. It goes to December 31st, 1946. The Korean conflict, June 27th, 1950 to January 31, 1955. This program actually starts again on the Gulf War starting in 1990 and has not ended as of yet. So that leaves Vietnam, which is a little bit tricky. So if you served from August 5th, 1964 to May 7, 1975, anywhere in the military, you will qualify.
Actively serving.
If you served in any active duty, just for the record, you need 90 days of active duty with 1 day inside any of these windows. Again, that's 90 days active duty with 1 day in any of these windows and a discharge other than dishonorable. Now, again, Vietnam is tricky. So just to reiterate, Vietnam from August 5th, 1964 to May 7, 1975, any active duty service with 1 day in that window will qualify. Now, from February 28th, 1961 to August 4th, 1964, you must have served in Vietnam. I'll say that again. From February 28th, 1961 to August 4th, 1964, you have to have physically been in Vietnam. And honestly, I've not had a good explanation as to why that is. That's just the case.
So that's the only war period that works that way. And that's an important stipulation that we want y'all to be aware of. So for those 4 years at the very beginning of Vietnam, you have to be in Vietnam. Not just active anywhere in the world, but you have to be active and in country for those 4 years to be able to access the benefit. Okay, so that's an important stipulation that we wanted to make everyone out there aware of moving forward. Now, David, we've talked about how this benefit can pay for care. It pays for care inside the home too, right? I mean, home care, home health, all that.
Absolutely. So this benefit pays for home care, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. And I'd like to share just kind of the amounts that people might be able to receive.
Please do.
So a surviving spouse could receive up to $13.18 per month. There's also a benefit for a veteran if his spouse only needs care or her spouse needs care, and that's $610 a month. A single veteran can receive up to $2,050 a month. A married veteran, where the veteran needs care, can receive up to $24.31 per month. And on the rare occasions that we have two married vets that both need care, they can receive over $3,200 a month.
Wow. Say those numbers again, David. I mean, that's very impressive, and I want the veterans out there to understand what they could have access to.
So we have the three most common that we see are surviving spouses, and that's $13.18 per month. A single veteran, $2,050 a month, and a married veteran, where the veteran needs care, is just over $2,400 a month.
So on the surviving spouse aspect, there's certain rules for in Social Security regarding, which spouse comes first, second, if you get remarried. Are there any kind of those types of situations for the VA benefit?
Absolutely. A surviving spouse cannot remarry or she loses the benefits.
Okay.
And she cannot divorce the veteran prior to his death. She would also lose the benefit. So if you have divorced the veteran or you remarry after the veteran, then you are not eligible for this benefit.
Period.
There's no discussion with the VA at that point.
Interesting. So, food for thought about whether you get married or get that divorce and when. So that's very interesting. I did not know that it was that kind of breakdown for the surviving spouse.
There are a variety of things that we talked about for the care expense, and so there's some areas that we can, make sure we maximize all of those benefits. But the two areas where there is zero flexibility is, did you serve in a wartime, that 90 days with 1 day in the window, and for a surviving spouse, you cannot have divorced a veteran or remarried. Those are zero wiggle room.
And regardless, you can access any potential provider of these benefits because the money goes directly into a bank account, correct?
That's correct. So that's really great is if you're aging in place, or even if you start with home care and then you need to move to assisted living and then you need to move to memory care, if you've got the maximum benefit, that stays and you never have to reapply unless your income changes.
So are these benefits taxable?
These benefits are non-taxable.
Non-taxable benefits. How about that, ladies and gents? Non-tax benefits from the VA. So anything else you think that's important that we haven't already discussed about aid and attendance, David?
The biggest thing I'd like to reiterate is it is a need-based program, but you do not have to be destitute. And the eligibility is kind of complicated, so if they want to call us, we will make sure they're eligible. And if they're not, we actually offer a money-back guarantee. So we will tell you if you're eligible or not because it only makes sense for us to do so.
So definitely, we're going to have that discussed in our final segment a little bit more. And we're going to summarize today's show and learn more about David and Veteran Care Advisors when we come back after these messages on Radio KAIR. Stay tuned.
Radio K-Air, 21st century streaming radio. Thanks for listening to Radio K-Air.
Welcome back to Senior Choices. I'm Brent Vesay, host, and we are here with David Whitfield of Veteran Care Advisors, and we've had a fantastic discussion about the VA programs, what they have available for veterans, not only from the healthcare side, but from the educational side. And then we had a great discussion on aid and attendance. And I learned a lot today. I hope you have too, about this program that's exceptional. It really is an exceptional program. We've learned about how, for the most part, the crisis hotline system is, not for the most part, it is available to all veterans, period. Regardless of how you left the military, if you are in crisis, you need immediate help, you call the number that David mentioned. David, do you have that number again that for the crisis hotline that we would be able to have people call?
Yes, that's 1-800-273-8255, option 1.
So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That number is there for veterans that need help, okay? Then we have the healthcare system. And the healthcare system, more or less, as long as you have to have that discharge paper, okay? But as long as you have something other than a dishonorable discharge, you should be able to access the system by applying for it, going through the process, getting that VA card, and then being able to have access to health care in the system, okay? And urgent care from certain vendors that you can find out on the DeBakey website here in Houston area. And for those of you out there that are not in the Houston area, you go to your main veteran hospital website in your city, okay, that's nearest you, and they should have a list of vendors available for urgent care options that veterans can access, okay? But that's a great benefit. My grandfather was in the program, and he got a lot of glasses and hearing aids and all kinds of things that were very beneficial and helped him live his best life for sure. We talked about the GI Bill and how fantastic it is. David used it himself. My brother-in-law used it to be able to finish up his undergraduate and then start his med school. He's a doctor now with his own practice, and doing very well after serving 3 tours in Afghanistan and a tour in Iraq. So it's a great benefit, the GI Bill. And here in Texas, the Hazelwood Act allows us to be able to transfer it to kids or grandkids. So that's another great benefit for families to be able to access and leverage. And then we talked about aid and attendance. Okay? Very specific, very detailed. I would encourage people to call David. Okay? Get that free consultation. Give him your details about what it is that you have done in service and when. And that's a good start. And I think that's a good transition now to learn more about Veteran Care Advisors. So David, tell us more about Veteran Care Advisors, what y'all do, and how can people get in contact with you?
Well, James Rush is the founder of Veteran Care Advisors, and he is a accredited licensed financial planner. And he started looking at these benefits for his veteran clients. But so many people heard about this and found out about it that more and more people were calling about the benefits. So he ultimately turned this into kind of a side business. Now, almost a year ago, this has been running for 10 years, and almost a year ago I came on board and separated it from the financial services, and now it's its own complete business, its own P&L, the whole 9 yards. And so now we have brought on more people, and we're able to help more and more veterans. So it's very exciting to have that kind of a growth in a business that exists solely to help veterans.
So a lot of your team are veterans, like yourself, correct?
I am a veteran, and I take care of all of the eligibility calls. In fact, we're looking to hire a candidate right now who's also a veteran who will do the same thing that I'm doing. So we love the idea of veterans helping veterans. I served 10 years in the United States Air Force, so the ability to help these other veterans is just a great thing for me.
Well, thank you for your service. And my brother-in-law was also in the Air Force, so love the Air Force.
But we'll even help Army folks.
Coast Guard too, correct?
Coast Guard, absolutely. In fact, there are certain merchant marines and in World War II nurses, auxiliaries, and things of that nature that will actually qualify. So if you served in any facet, then call us at 1-888-459-6544. That will allow us to do that free qualification call for you to see if you're in fact eligible.
So with that 888 number, that's toll free, folks. So it's a free call for you to be able to reach David and his team. Eventually, y'all are going to be helping Space Force folks too, right?
Right. Again, if they served any time after 1990, when that day comes, we will be able to assist them as well. People can also visit our website and send a message through that, and that website is www.vcaus.com, or for us old military folks, that's www.VictorCharlieAlphaUniformSierra.com.
Love that. I love that. So, in general, your bread and butter is really the aid and attendance, but if people have other questions about other things, would you be able to point them in a good direction?
Absolutely. We want to be a resource to veterans. We have partners like you that can help them find a specific location if they don't have one in mind. We have partners in the home care industry. We work with an accredited VA attorney as well as another VSO, Veteran Service Officer. So if we don't know the answer, then we will point you in the direction that you can get it.
So, I mean, we hadn't talked about it, but the VA loan system is out there as well, and you could point them to where they could get a VA loan, generally speaking.
Right. Most of your mortgage companies are familiar with the VA loan, and it's great, especially for folks starting out that don't have enough money to put down a giant down payment.
So say that number again, toll free, and give that website one more time so people will be able to find you on the interweb and on that phone.
That's 1-888-459-6544 or www.vcaus.com.
So that's where you can find him. David, you had some fantastic information today. Thank you so much for coming and giving us more insight into this great program, the Veterans Administration, and how this can be accessed for veterans across the country and the state.
It's my pleasure. If I get to help other vets every day, it gives me a good feeling when I go home at night.
That's definitely better than the alternative, but thank you very much for what you do and the service that you have performed for our country and are still doing. So thank you very much today for a great show. Come back next week for Senior Choices, Living Your Best Life on Radio KAIR.
Who knew some of the best authentic Italian cuisine is in Kingwood? Head over to Zamiti's Italian Ristorante on Lake Houston for an unforgettable dining experience with friends and family. Pair delicious food made fresh daily using the highest quality ingredients with excellent customer service. And you can get a meal on the lake with a Sicilian flair. Call 281-361-7499 today for reservations or simply come on over. Radio K-Air, the only local community daily information station for Atascocita, Humble, Kingwood, New Caney, and Porter communities. Radio K-Air.